This project is proposed as an amendment to the county's zoning ordinance, and therefore it goes through the planning department. Tonight we're going to do a short presentation on some of the process of getting to where we're at for drafting the draft ordinance. Brian will go over some of the standards that are being proposed, and then after that we'd like to open it up to public comment. We'll note that there's no decisions that are being made tonight. That's made by the recommendation of the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors. And there will be additional opportunities for you to make comments on the draft ordinance as it moves forward through the planning process. And we'll kind of touch on those a little bit. So to get us started, why are we here? Why are we doing this project? This came about as a part of the board's initiative to look at the ongoing housing crisis in the state of California and in Nevada County. And their first phase, if you will, of this project was to develop the Tiny Homes on Wheels ordinance. And that was passed on January 14th, 2025. In addition to the Tiny Homes on Wheels, the Board of Supervisors and the Building Department also passed Title 25, which is limited density owner-built rural housing. And those things were put in place to help reduce development costs, to increase housing supply, and to provide for regulatory flexibility. Many of you, some of you I recognize, have been a part of this process through the Tiny Homes on Wheels ordinance and moving forward. And so some of the project milestones, the Board of Supervisors on April 22nd developed and approved a work plan to go forward to develop a draft ordinance. A project dedicated webpage was created, and comments were starting to be received by the planning department. On May 27th, we did send out a notice to everybody on our distribution list to send in their comments to help formulate the standards in the draft ordinance, and held a facilitated public kickoff meeting on May 27th at the Air Crew Center. And then raise of hands, one of the things that we did do is a public survey. Who completed the survey? That's great. We really got a lot of input and guidance through that process. I worked for the county planning department for about 20 years, and it's one of the most, besides our high school, most input that we've really gotten on a project like this. So really kudos to all of you for doing that. So from that public survey, and we worked together, the planning department worked together with the community development agency to draft standards. Essentially, our original thought was to go into what we have a temporary RV ordinance, an occupancy ordinance, which allows for 90 days of camping on a property without a residence. It allows for urgent care for every 6 months that you can stay to allow a person who has medical needs for every 6 months could stay in it. It allows for employee housing in an RV. And then there's one more. If you're building a home, you can get a temporary occupancy to stay in your RV or your fifth wheel while you're working on that home. So our original thought was we would just kind of update that and keep it fairly simple. But as comments came in, there was a lot of factors that we weighed into the ordinance that we drafted. And so we kind of pivoted to looking at our Tiny Homes on Wheels ordinance as the starting point for drafting this ordinance. So there'll be a lot of similarities you'll see, as Brian mentioned. So our hope today is to get comments from you. We'll take those comments down. Brian and I'll try and get the best notes. Really do encourage you to provide notes and comments in writing. Those are due on the initial draft on September 22nd by 5 p.m. And Brian will kind of go over the ordinance requirements. And then, after giving comments, if there's still time, Brian, I'll do our best to answer some questions. But from there, I'll turn it over to Brian. And again, I just really want to thank you all for coming tonight. It's really important ordinance we're working with for the county, and all of your input's really valuable. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Again, my name is Brian Foss. I'm the planning director with the county. And as Tyler mentioned, this ordinance is part of the zoning ordinance, so it's going through the planning department to draft the ordinance, along with our other CDA departments providing input. And we'll go to the Planning Commission for consideration and recommendations to our Board of Supervisors. And we can go over the schedule a little bit. Nothing has been set officially, but we're probably looking at a planning commission date in October and potentially a board of supervisors meeting in November, but we will certainly advertise and notify those dates as they become available. So I apologize, the screen's not very large, and there's a number of tiny words up there, but I will be going over them. These are the standards that are contained in our 5-page draft ordinance that is online and has been circulated or available for public comment for a few weeks now, and will be available until September 22nd for the official comment period. We certainly will still continue to take comments as we go through the public hearing process. You're able to provide comments at the planning commission meeting, prior to the planning commission meeting, and at the board meeting. We'll be releasing staff reports, and so there'll be other opportunities, but we definitely encourage your comments early on so we can take those into consideration and build those into the ordinance if possible. So I'm going to kind of hit on most of the points that are contained in the ordinance to just give an overview of how the ordinance is structured, some of the requirements to allow a recreational vehicle as a dwelling unit, and some of the permitting requirements. So first off, we base the definition of a recreational vehicle on the state definition, and it includes a motorhome, a travel trailer, a truck camper, camping trailer, or camping trailer with or without motive power, designed for human habitation for recreational, emergency, or other occupancy that is structurally sound, safe to occupy, and protect occupants from the elements, which meets following criteria, including less than 320 square feet of internal living area and no more than 400 square feet measured from the outside of the entire structure. It needs to be built on a single chassis, and it has to be registered with the DMV and meet certain safety requirements, either the ANSI requirements, which is the American National Standards Institute, or the NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association. So most travel trailers, recreational vehicles are built with within those standards, and will require that those standards are met during the permitting process and the approval process for these types of vehicles. As Tyler mentioned, there's a number of standards that are required that are built off of our tiny homes on wheels ordinance, but also similar to the other ordinance requirements that allow RV occupancy for temporary purposes, for urgent care, or for a caretaker during construction of a primary residence on the site. So they're similar to the existing structure of our zoning code that addresses a similar type of issue. These, as written in the ordinance, require an administrative development permit. This is a staff level permit. There's not a public hearing or any public noticing that's required. It's similar to a building permit. However, it's kind of the entitlement for the planning department will check the site plan, make sure all the standards are met, and then a building permit will be required if there's electrical hookups, environmental health permit for water, and for septic system, sewer hookup, whatever the case may be. These are valid for a 2-year time frame with that initial ADP or administrative development permit approval, and then there'll be a renewal process as part of the code, which will ensure that there's another inspection to make sure that all of the requirements of the code are still being met by the travel trailer, RV, whatever is originally permitted, and that's on a 2-year basis that can be renewed. Again, the building permits and EH permits, those are the one-time permits that are required for the installation of the vehicle on the site. And then if there are any additions or changes to the structure itself, that will need to be certified through an ANSI or the American National Standard Institute inspector. Our building department will not be inspecting these because these are outside of the standard building code. These units will be allowed as essentially an accessory dwelling unit. It's not technically an accessory dwelling unit, but it needs to be accessory to a primary unit that's developed on the site. And the reasoning for that is the desire to use the existing infrastructure that's already on site to serve the house. There may need to be additional electric panel, maybe an upgrade to the septic system, things like that, but it is not a standalone vacant piece of property that a unit can be moved onto. It needs to be already developed and permitted with an existing single-family residence. As the ordinance is written, the parcel size, we require a 3-acre minimum parcel size, and that is built into our general plan and our zoning code, which requires 3-acre minimums, and that's due to well and septic requirements in order to have minimum usable septic disposable areas, as well as setbacks from wells, etc. And they will be allowed in the R1, which is kind of the typical single-family dwelling zoning, RA, which is residential agriculture, which are a little bit larger parcels, and then in all the rural zoning districts, which are the AG, which is agriculture, AE is agriculture exclusive, FR is forest, and TPZ, which is our timber production zones. So most of the residential and rural zoning districts would qualify to get permitted and place a unit on these parcels as long as it meets that zoning and that 3-acre minimum parcel size. As I mentioned, there are inspections required, and that will be required upon the installation of the recreational vehicle on the site to ensure that it meets the standards, including the foundation, the appropriate hookups to electrical and water and septic, as I mentioned. The current draft ordinance allows 1 RV per parcel, so they're not multiple RVs, there's not a dwelling roof, and they must meet the current setbacks that any other type of structure would be required to meet on the site. That can range from 10 feet to 30 feet, depending on the zoning district, from R1 to AG, which allow or require larger setback requirements. We do have a screening requirement, mostly for the undercarriage, including the wheels and axles. You can read it, but it's basically shall be concealed from view by screening that is solid and affixed at all times during habitation. So once they are approved to be a dwelling unit, that screening will need to be in place, and that will be part of the inspections that occur. If it's not being used, an RV can be stored on your site and doesn't need to be screened the undercarriage, but in order to be permitted as a dwelling unit, screening would be required. A suitable foundation is required to place the vehicle on. It must be paved or gravel to certain standards. And the wheels on the vehicle must remain on the vehicle and inflated. And the structure must have tie-down anchors or stabilizers according to the manufacturer's specifications in order to make sure that the unit is solid, it's not going to roll away, it's not going to be a safety hazard, that it is safe to live in, and it is in a permanent condition so that it can't be moved around. There's also a requirement to meet wind and snow loads. This is kind of what standard structures are required to meet. Anything above 3,200 feet in elevation will require like a ramada or some sort of structure over the vehicle, because most vehicles manufactured are not load rated to accommodate the snow levels above that elevation. And then there's a maintenance requirement that the snow has to be removed from the vehicle or the ramada to ensure that it remains structurally sound. We have habitability requirements, tough words. The vehicle must have heat, lighting, hot and cold water, a kitchen, toilets and sink, as long as fire extinguishers, and there is some solid waste requirements so that the trash collection is accommodated for with the waste management or other self-haul regulations so that the site does not, accumulate a number of trash or other debris. So those are things that will be looked for and inspected during the renewal period and the initial permitting of the vehicle. As I mentioned, modifications to the RV, they are not standard structures that our building department or building inspectors have the training to inspect. However, there are these ANSI trained inspectors that will need to sign off on any modifications if there's some a window added or some other type of heating unit or something that is an aftermarket unit that is installed that will need to be signed off and inspected by an ANSI trained inspector. And then we have fire protection plan requirements that require evacuation routes and evacuation plan to be identified for the site, as well as a fuels management plan, just like any other residential unit will have to have defensible space. So clearing, our fire planner will also be part of the review for these permits and part of the inspection so that any vehicle placed on the appropriate foundation, hooked up to the appropriate utilities and infrastructure will also meet fire fuels management and clear zones for vegetation in order to ensure as much as possible safety from causing a fire or being burned in the fire. That is basically the main components of the ordinance. It's a 5-page ordinance, and it goes over the permitting process. With that administrative development permit, essentially we would be looking for a site plan that would get submitted that would show the location of the structure. It would show the details of the foundation, and it would show all the information about how the recreational vehicle will be served by utilities, where the electrical panel will be, how it's going to be hooked up to the sewer, or the septic permits, the environmental health department, et cetera, as I already mentioned. So they are treated very similarly to a stick-built home or a manufactured home that's placed on a site with all relatively the same standards. The trickier part was the structure itself, because they're not the traditional building code construction. And so that's where the ANSI or the National Fire Protection Agency standards come into play, because we do want some sort of certification and safety stamp to make sure that they are constructed to offer safe habitation, as well as weather the weather in our county that can be fairly extreme. So very similar to a stick-built house, with some exceptions to accommodate the type of vehicles that they are. And that is kind of an overview of the requirements. Our last slide is how to provide comments. As Tyler mentioned, we do encourage you to provide written comments. We will take some notes from your comments tonight, but definitely we would like to have them in writing and be part of the public record. With that, we are going to have people come up to the microphone and go ahead and give us your comments. We would like to, we have a number of people in the room. We have about an hour and 45 minutes left. So keeping it to about 3 minutes is what we're going to ask you to do, so everyone has a chance, or as many people as possible have a chance to provide comments. And I'll let our cameraman kind of lead the situation.
I'm the director of the Real Estate Boat Project. I live in a trailer just before. I do not have an address. We at the No Place to Go project support this ordinance. We have amendments, but we don't see any deal breakers in it as the way it is written. We're going to hear all kinds of reasons for and against the ordinance tonight. So I'll use this time to describe the improvements we're suggesting. Probably the biggest disincentive to requesting a permit for a legal RV placement is a 2-year renewal. People are not going to want to pay to have themselves inspected every 2 years, kind of an invasion of privacy. I think one inspection, maybe every 5 years, but with this is something that's going to slow down the registration. Number two, we want to see the reduced permissible acre from 3 to 1 acre because this is designed to create housing, more housing on 1 acre. So that would have to be setbacks and screening. You couldn't put your RV in your front driveway. It's got to be back from your property and screened. We want to see the increase in the rental term. This is not a short-term rental deal for tourists. This is for local housing. This is people who are low-wage workers. We don't have enough housing for them. This is a big one. The ordinance says you can't remove the wheels. If you remove the wheels and put it on a block or a foundation, it then becomes a house, and the federal government will then recognize it and make tenants eligible for housing choice vouchers. A lot of these people are low income and need housing assistance. So there might be more regulations that have to be written for that, but that's an option that we'd like to see. This is important. Wildfires are risk to all of us. We don't want to see any tiny homes, RVs, anything on the road during evacuation or during a warning. Because that puts everybody's safety in jeopardy. In exchange for having a permit, you agree to leave your home like everybody else. And there should be a fine for a violation of this. The one thing this ordinance is really missing is an incentive. There's a lot of disincentives, fees, permits, restrictions, but why would people want to do this? So we're suggesting a 1-year amnesty for people to come into compliance if they're already in the trailer, and if they're going to register for a permit, they have 1 year to do it with some kind of reduction in fees or something with give them an incentive to do this, because otherwise it's just housing on paper, not on the ground. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Charlie Price. I'm a landlord in Nevada City. And I just want to point out that wealthy retirees can live in their RVs year-round. They'll sell their house to have the money to then tour the country and live in their RV year-round. So having it available for anybody to live in their RV without having to travel all over the place, what is the difference there? I would like to see the sanitation, maybe another category. So units that can be driven and dumped at a dump station, there could be proof with receipts. There's really no reason why somebody could take that same RV and travel the world or the country, dumping it as need be. That couldn't exist in our county for people that need a place to live. There could be inspections involved, there could be fees for the inspections so it doesn't a burden on the county. But I don't see a reason why this whole thing couldn't also apply to another category that are mobile and are dumped. And in that case, you're not affecting the sewer system. And a lot of these requirements go away. You don't need really hardly anything. You don't need electric. If you've got a dry camping ability, you've got solar, or you've got a generator, there's no reason why somebody couldn't live that way on their property as long as they can show that they are able to drive their trailer or their RV to be dumped. Thanks, you guys. And thanks for all the work you've been doing.
Hi, good evening. Steve DeMake, how are you? I'm currently concerned with code enforcement on all of the above issues. Right now, currently, I have a trailer park at the end of our road. Code enforcement's been called 3 times over the last 3 years. They've issued them a warning, which is great and all. But the trailers are still there and the people are still there. 4 or 5 trailers. And now I'm watching a 40-acre parcel get developed. A bulldozer was out there like 3 months ago, so we dumped 10 or 15 yards of gravel for additional space for more RVs. So having one RV on property is one thing, but when they turn it into a campground or a cash cow, a way to get additional income, that makes complete sense. But there is no real fine that's worth the weight in gold. Realistically, you can rent a RV spot at the KOA campground for $1,350 a month for full hookups. Well, the first fine with code enforcement is $250, which is really a drop in the bucket. So realistically, it's going to take code enforcement 3 years to get up to 1 month's equal rent if somebody were to rent a real spot. On top of that, out in rural county, kind of makes sense because you can't see it, but the next thing is who's going to enforce it. So when you call, I'm going to tell you the neighbor's got a trailer, you guys are going to come out, you have no jurisdiction, you can't get on the property, you got to get a warrant. Nobody's going to do that. If they increase the fines to make it at least to where we only have 1 trailer per parcel instead of a campground, make it $5,000 for your first offense, or a warning and then $5,000 per trailer. The second offense is $10,000. I think people wouldn't jump through the hoops to do an illegal one versus a legal one. So I'm a contractor, and I've been building in this county pretty much my entire life. I'm born and raised here in Nevada County. Pressure dust and sand filters are engineered systems. The ordinance suggests that we can just plug an RV into an engineered system that's been engineered for a 1 or 2 or 3 bedroom home, whichever your soil or your pocketbook can afford. So say somebody's got a $750,000 home, 40 acres, they got 5 trailers out there for 4 years, and then they decide to get rid of it all. And they're pumping all this in somebody's sand filter, and then they sell the property. The new owner has basically got a destroyed septic system that the county's allowed them to destroy, and nobody's going to enforce how many trailers are out there or what actually happens on the land. A lot of the things in here make sense, but the thing that doesn't make sense is there's currently no enforcement. There's currently no, you did it wrong, we can't do that. And all we're going to have now is people burning down the forest. It makes 100% more sense to have this in town where you can actually plug it into the city septic, because you can't overload it. It would actually just increase the size of it, just like you were to. So if I add a single bedroom onto my 3-bedroom home, currently I can't do that. But you guys are suggesting that we can just go ahead and put a trailer there, or 2 or 3. Nobody's going to enforce it. How would they know? None of it makes any sense. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Janet Banner, and I'm going to tell a slightly different version of the previous gentleman. I live on a section of Red Dog Road that is east of Banner Bobcat, out past the point where the fire marshal says that they cannot adequately respond to fire emergencies due to the width of the road, the lack of fire hydrants, and trees that are covering the road. Every day, almost every day, I wish every day, I walk to the mailboxes. It's about a mile. And on my walk back and forth, I am passed by multiple early model dust-covered vehicles. They are headed to the trailers that they live in illegal encampments, off the road, way in the woods, you can't see them. Code enforcement can't do anything about it. These folks are dry camping, and what that means is there's no hookups, there's no electricity, there's no water, and most unfortunately, there's no sewer. They pay rent to live in these trailers to a large landowner in the area. There are a lot of these encampments. Many times a year, on my road, these vehicles are abandoned. Not out of spite, but because the folks that are driving them to their trailers can't afford to take care of them. They run out of gas, flat tires, broken engine, whatever it is. And we are 7 miles from town services. I don't understand this proposed RV ordinance. It doesn't make sense to me, because it would encourage unhoused residents to live so far from necessary services. Even if it is supposedly done in a way that it is legal, it's still wrong. They need to be closer to necessary services like health and mental care, transportation, food. You know, whatever. They are so far away and they don't have the means to transport themselves back and forth to town properly. So I'm suggesting, in a similar way, that you please consider consolidating these RV dwellings to centralized locations, close to town services and the transportation that they need. I have a second item too, and I'd just like to say, from my 10 years of experience of the issues the county has with code enforcement for the illegal encampments with trailers, that in order for this ordinance to follow the requirements that you've laid out, there's got to be a large budget. And I haven't heard anything about that. Thank you.
Maureen Braver, District 1. I'm also in the unincorporated rural Nevada County up above Van Mountain. What is a home? What are the obligations of home ownership? What are the obligations of landlords who choose to enter into tenant agreements for living spaces on their property? These are important questions for the county to answer when asking the homeowner community to accept RVs as an equivalent to an accessory dwelling unit or an ADU. As a homeowner, my primary dwelling is certified for the building permit process. My primary dwelling is required to maintain certified electrical, water, and septic connection. I'm required to have a properly raised snow load area. I'm required to comply with PC Resources Code Section 4291 for defensible space to protect my property in the neighborhood from wildfire. My ADU is also required to maintain certified electrical, water, and septic connection and comply with snow load requirements and PC Resources Code Section 4291. I also pay property tax on these structures to support county government activities. If the county is proposing that an RV is comparable to an ADU, then all the same compliance requirements of an ADU must also be observed for this living space. You cannot have it both ways. Either the RV is an ADU and will comply with all existing residential structure requirements, or it's an RV and the county can dedicate space at the Nevada County Fairgrounds and adjacent RV park for these units until such time as the county opens more RV parks to address their RVs as affordable housing solution. I recommend the county not dilute any of the proposed safety measures currently found in the draft ordinance, temporary or otherwise. I also request the ordinance require homeowners who choose to place an RV as an ADU on their property pay their fair share to assist with funding additional code enforcement and first responder personnel through either increased property tax and/or appropriate certification and recertification fees. Whether or not RVs will successfully serve as ADUs is completely dependent upon county representatives carefully considering impacts of this untested proposal. Homeowners look to our representatives to support our investment in this county and our homes by ensuring all ADUs meet the same permitting requirements and are safe for tenants, landlords, and our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Well said. I agree. Enforcement is a big deal. I live near an encampment. It's a fire hazard. It's a health hazard. No matter how many times it's red flagged or called up, nobody comes. So I think enforcement is a big deal. I also agree with what she said. If the homeowner agrees to put an RV as a living structure on their property, then the homeowner should be responsible for the compliance of that unit and paying taxes or something to offset the cost of that person living there and the utilities, everything else. So those are my main things. Also, the setbacks is a big concern. You know, I'm a real estate agent, I'm showing a property and the neighbor has a trailer right next to the property line. It decreases the value of that other person's home because of the unsightliness of it. So it has to be set back enough that it's not seen and screened like this guy said, one of the guys said. So screening and ownership, these aren't rentals, these are owned and they have to prove ownership and it needs to be enforced.
Hello, Scott North, homeowner in Nevada City. Here because I'm also concerned about changing the permission structure that this does with RVs and how we've seen that affect other counties around the state when they've become more permissive about letting people live in RVs where they choose. And now they're cracking down on it. So I'm worried that once word gets out that this county is allowing it, we're going to have a lot more of this problem. A lot of people coming here and not necessarily doing it the permitted way, but because the county has not been able to enforce these thousands of people that are living off the grid essentially in the county. Secondly, I'm concerned about the fire and evacuation risks. I know that they've talked about making it illegal to leave in your RV, but how is that going to be enforced in the chaos of a fire? I can see the roadways just being clogged up with giant vehicles. Third, I'm worried about enforcement of the septic. I mean, if all of this is going on now, all these illegal encampments, what's going to change here? Is enforcement going to change, and where's that going to come? So I think it's just the concern that you're going to be inviting a whole lot of people to this area that had a tough go of it, and I understand the intent here, but I think there's going to be unintended consequences that nobody's looking at right now. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Desiree Kennard, and I agree with trying to keep things safe. I have lived here my whole life and have watched people struggle and suffer in ways that are insane. I know of people that are on lists for low-income housing and apartments and everything else, and it's like 2 years wait and this and that, and they're homeless, and some people are sleeping in the woods, and we need a solution. So I really encourage the humanity of it. I'm sorry, sometimes it's an eyesore to see a trailer on somebody's property in a fancy area, but that might be a relative that has no other choice. So I think that needs to be one of the biggest considerations, not just for somebody to make extra money on their property, but to understand there's a serious problem where people are shoved out of their communities and have no other choice but to live in these weird ways. And I've seen it. I don't personally, thank God, but there's a lot of people I know that are, and it's a terrible thing to watch in your community. And so as far as how much the permits, how much all these regulations are going to cost a homeowner to establish, will have to go into the rent, and then make sure that that's a reasonable price to live in a trailer for somebody to feel like a human for a minute so they can get their life together. So it's actually really there has to be a way to encourage people to do these things to make it fair for people that are really struggling. And all they need is just a chance. And all these things that the county says they supply, they do not. People are on a list for years and years and just living in the woods. It's insane. All because they want to stay in their hometown where they grew up. This is all they know. So hopefully the humanity part of it is more considered than, making money off of it, for sure. That is my hope. Thank you.
Hi, Ursula Donna Frio. I live in District 1 off Cement Hill Road. So in January, the board passed the Tiny House on Wheels ordinance and specifically stated RVs are not part of this ordinance. RVs are not intended to be used for long-term occupancy and are built to different standards than long-term, different standards than homes. This distinction ensures housing options meet the safety and durability standards for permanent living. Many other cities have tried reducing the standards and allowing RVs as permanent housing, and it's never worked out for them. And the reason that their board members gave for finally getting rid of these ordinances is you are normalizing people living in campers, pop-out tent campers, trailers, RVs, which an RV means recreational vehicle, not a home. And the woman who just preceded me, that was tough to follow. But I agree with the comments that were made here that maybe an alternative until there is more affordable housing is that you do have centralized RV trailer parks near evacuation routes where people can hook up to septic, sewer lines, water. They have garbage disposal, laundry, something, but bare bones. They don't need the swimming pools and the sauna at the fancy RV, just someplace safe near a major evacuation route. Living on Cement Hill Road, I don't know if any of you have ever driven up that road. It's a long, narrow, winding road, and once you pass Wet Hill and Indian Hill, there are no other outlets. I just pray if there's ever a fire that we have plenty of notice to get out. There will be a tremendous bottleneck. So you can have all the evacuation planning that you want, unless you're building another evacuation road towards the top of Cement Hill. It will be a death trap. And I'm sorry, I do not see sheriff's deputies stopping people evacuating in a camper. I'm law abiding, but if I could evacuate in my home and take all my likely uninsured possessions, I would consider it. And not only do I live off Cement Hill Road, I live off a private winding driveway. It's a quarter of a mile long. We are at the top. 2 cars in most sections cannot pass each other. There's a steep drop off to Cement Hill Road, or you're up against an embankment. Someone has to back up to allow another car to pass. Perhaps we had zoning in place because of long, windy driveways like this. This isn't suburbia with wide streets where cars can pass each other. And to add to the density, not to mention the fire threat of people cooking outside, under trees, not on concrete. Affordable housing might be the second most important issue in Nevada County, but fire safety and evacuation safety is the first. Because if our homes burn, none of us has a place to live. And I can't believe we're even here discussing all of these exceptions and workarounds. Oh, well, maybe they don't need to hook up to septic and sewage. Maybe they don't need a dedicated electrical source. Well, generators can only be a backup source, but when the roll-up solar panel runs out after 20 minutes, I'm going to be listening to a generator. Do all of you realize you're going to be listening to generators, a loud gas generator, for hours on end on your properties? I have a well on a neighbor's property. I had to have it explained to me at least 10 times how we have the sole rights to our only water source on a neighbor's property before we made the biggest investment of our lives here in Nevada County. And yeah. Way up. So, that's my.
Hi, I'm Robin Nichols, I'm in District 1, and I'm also a realtor. And I heard a lot of interesting comments and I think some good suggestions. I have a question. What is the goal of this ordinance? Is the goal to help create more affordable housing or just temporary housing? It seems that the only thing allowed is, per the ordinance as it is now, is just temporary for urgent care for up to 2 years, or if you're building a home as it has been. But it doesn't seem to address the problem of the unhoused or creating more housing. I think, contrary to what the last speaker said, it seems like you have taken a lot of this into consideration in terms of safety and fire, and people can't just jump on your property, that they have to tie into an existing system or build a compatible system, one that will support it. And this isn't any different than building a stick-built ADU. It still requires, it would still create more density, so I don't see how it being an RV versus a stick-built ADU, how that affects the fire safety, or because it sounds like you're taking all that into consideration equally, which I appreciate. I would like to, I thought coming here that this was also actually trying to help address the homeless issue, and I wanted to suggest, like some others have, that I appreciate all of the requirements that you have in place, but to ask people to make that huge investment that it's going to be required for just a 2-year permit, I think that that's unreasonable to ask of a property owner. I mean, you're asking them to lay a lot of infrastructure just for 2-year occupancy and without a guarantee of renewal. So I think that we have RVs dotting throughout our county already, whether people are living in them or not. And in really nice neighborhoods, I've sold $1 million homes with RVs allowed to be parked in the driveway. So we do have RVs already throughout that. If you consider it an eyesore, it's an eyesore. To allow people to live in it as long as it's supported with the infrastructure that we require, I think makes sense. The other thing, though, I think that would make sense is to allow people to build on, and I understand you have to go with the ANSI standards or whatever, to build homes that would actually fit in more with our neighborhoods than these metal-clad RVs, to allow people to do stick-built, maybe on a chassis, but something that, I've seen cabins on wheels that actually are lap-sided and look nice and would fit in more with our aesthetics. And I think to allow people to do that would be nice. The other thing I wanted to talk about is mobile homes rents are really expensive. I mean, they're like $1,200 a month right now. So why not allow somebody to purchase a property and put a mobile home or a mobile home on it and have it be their primary residence? Like, why do you have to have it just as an accessory dwelling? That I'm not quite understanding. As long as they have all the infrastructure in place that they would to build a home, why not allow them to do a mobile home on their own property as opposed to paying these fees? So the cash cows, as somebody pointed out, they're just going to go up every year and doesn't give them any security. Many retirees choose RVs because they're more affordable, or they choose these mobile home parks because the taxes are lower and insurance is lower, but the rent space keeps going up. So I think that allowing people to have RVs on their, or mobile homes on their own properties with all the requirements that you create for ADUs, I think that should be allowed as a standalone structure as opposed to just an accessory dwelling. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Peter Amadeo, District 1. I support this proposed ordinance. I would love to see this be more long-term rather than short-term housing. I wouldn't want to see a bunch of increase in Airbnbs, VRBOs, and such from this. I think there's a happy medium between helping out those who are in need of housing and meeting the safety standards that we have with fire and and water, septic especially. And I think that those are valid concerns. I would actually really love to see coordination with the health department to find some solution to integrate the gray waters landscape and the waterless toilet standards there that do have a lot of requirements in them to make them safe. And I would say there should be some setbacks, but I would keep those on the minimal side. I would like to see an ability of maybe not an RV, but a tiny house to eventually be put on a piece of land as main property of main residence. I believe that would really benefit the people. For example, if they're out making fires in the woods to stay warm, I don't see that as a big difference between living in an RV and having more requirements and having more of space to to have heating in the house. It may be less of a fire hazard than if you're out in the boonies. That'll be for me. Thank you.
Good evening, Rob Silverstein, the eBay Foundation. So there's been a lot of improvements on this in the earlier draft we saw, and I want to compliment you on the thoroughness of the document and addressing a lot of the concerns that we had. Still remaining, well, I have one question, and that is, on the slide, it has the word only inserted where it says an RV may be allowed as an accessory dwelling unit only for density purposes as allowed under this chapter. And then on this document that's printed up, it doesn't have the word only. So to me, that's a huge difference. So if you could clarify that, that would be useful. It sounds like now you're saying it has to be a residence on the property prior to getting one of these permitted. Okay, that's a significant difference, I think. Which might be limited in quite a bit as well. Another concern was regarding aesthetics. I think being on a 3-acre parcel is a big help because you have more room. But we're concerned that, and I really appreciate the picture you put up on your website or on your announcement of that kind of a rundown looking trailer. That someone would place one of those, in plain visibility in your neighborhood where, that's really kind of nice. So there's no real description in here or standards for that, any kind of arbitrary or regulatory oversight on that. It seems like that might become an issue. So I would be concerned about that. Sitting here listening to the crowd this evening, it really opened my eyes to the idea that there's a lot of problems with enforcement currently with people living out in the woods. It's not surprising. And so, in a way, it's kind of a reflection of the problem. But it also kind of points to the fact that having an ordinance like this might actually help with that problem, because whereas if you're a county inspector and you're told to go out on a piece of property and somebody's not bothering anybody, and they're living by, making ends meet, trying to get by on a trailer, you don't have to just evict them. There's a pathway. And so if there's enough funding, and if there's enough funding for enforcement, which may be something that needs to be looked at, it might actually help solve some of that problem as well. At least I would hope so. Otherwise, thank you very much for your efforts.
Hi, Valerie here. I didn't have a script or anything to read. I'll come to my thoughts here. I'm just probably getting scrambled. Seems like there's a couple of issues. One is encampments, which I don't approve of either. I really don't like. They're all over the place. And from what I'm hearing, they're really all over the place. And then making our neighborhoods fire safe. Making our neighborhoods fire safe. They're not fire safe. I live at the top of Piers on Great. It's not fire safe whatsoever in any shape, form, fashion, or any idea. God forbid, there's a fire here too, you know, I mean, we're gonna all be trying to get down the same 20-mile road to get out to 49, which is not quite close, it's not gonna work. And I'm a property owner, and I have no idea of my property, and it's there, I'm able to be there 6-7 months out of the year, correct? Yeah. Yeah. So, but I have to rent a place in town because I can't be out there any other time. Okay? And I should be able to, in my opinion, if I have a well, and I have a way for power, and I have a way for septic, whether it's being pumped, Johnny on the spot being pumped out, or whether I'm taking my trailer in, or whether I have a full-on septic, or if it's an alternative septic. Why does it have to be as big as a house if it's for 1 or 2 people? So is there some sort of alternative kind of septic that can be done? Is a question I have. And why can't they, for living out there in the summertime, where there's a lot more potential for fire and everything else, why can't we live out there in the wintertime? So anyway, that's where I'm at. I pay property taxes. I don't know if I don't get anything out of it. I don't get any benefit from the county out of it. They do plow the road, but that's about it. And I do have fire protection if and God forbid there's a fire up there. There's a fire department up there. But other than that, I don't get any services really for my property taxes as far as I'm concerned. And I should be able to live on my property in a safe RV as long as the utilities are not becoming a hazard, an environmental hazard. And that's all I have to say.
I'm Mike Prince. I live in Mount Sierra. I'm a volunteer resident there. And I find, after reading through the ordinance, that there's a lot of open holes in it that I couldn't live with. I understand that this has been brought up because of the homeless situation. I have a great deal of compassion for those homeless who are unhoused. Currently, we probably have about 150, according to the last count, 158 unhoused out of 586 at the last point in time count. We've got to understand that this is not a solution to that problem. There are other solutions, other things that will cover more people who need the homeless situation solved. We can't sprinkle them in RVs and tents and whatever throughout the county through any ordinance. Because that means that we have to provide transportation for them to get to county services. If we sprinkle them between Truckee and Lake of the Pines, can you imagine the amount of services that has to be transported to them and for the amount of transportation that they will need to get to those services? It's kind of ridiculous for us to even think that this ordinance will cover very many people. It will not bring people out of the woods. Where in the world is all of these trailers going to come from? These people can't afford these trailers. They can't afford the rent that's going to have to be charged from the septic systems and so on. I read someplace where it'll probably be a Section 8 requirement. I don't know if anyone's had experience with that, but yes, I have personally, but I have in the family. So here we are, we're talking about additional resources that has to be spread out over all of this area. Now there is a few things that could be looked at, and that is that the county provide a acreage, a lot of acreage, and provide the facilities these people need that will help them to work their way out of the predicament they're in. They need a way to move from the tent to supporting themselves, etc. And this ordinance puts them out where they can't do that. So whether it's private property, county property, whatever it is, there needs to be a large acreage called a safe stay area where laundry, showers, etc., guidance is there, and it should be very close to the county itself. So we really need to take a look at this. This ordinance is not a solution. It's the product of increasing that which has not worked in the past. Here we are with ordinances right now that are not being supported. People are doing what they damn well please. And there's no way for the county to go in and take care of those things. And I understand that some people have children who used to live in the basement. We don't have many basements here until they were 35 or in the garage. Now we have RVs that people use, and so they're using those for their children. So I understand that part of it. So let's move on. Let's forget about this ordinance, which is not good. I know I've been cut off, but that's all right. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Is that good? Since I'm talking? Okay, so I wrote this down so I can give you my 3 minutes worth, and I won't ramble on. So good evening. I want to commend all of you for all of the hard work you're doing, because I've been following along. My name is Rona Seabrook, and I moved to Nevada County in 1977, so that's 48 years ago. I have owned homes in Nevada City, Grass Valley, and Raleigh. To see if I wanted to live in Lake Wildwood, I rented there at least for 3 years. Over the years, I have hiked, cross-country skied much of the county. I think I've come across every swimming hole there is in the Yuba. And I was a realtor with Grassroots Coldwell Banker Real Estate. So I've traveled all of the bumpy roads and all the smooth roads throughout the county. So I feel like I really know Nevada County, and I know property and homes. I've seen them develop. I've seen our county go from 23,000 people in 1977 to over 100,000 now. I've seen the developments of Lake Wildwood, Sierra, etc. And prior to Airbnbs and VRBOs, affordable housing was easier to find. Prior to more money folks moving here, affordable housing was easier to find. And prior to Nevada County receiving national and international recognition as a tourist destination, affordable housing was easier to find. So there are many reasons why this has changed over the years. And I wanted to just say, I've heard a lot of the comments, yes, there are a lot of people living in encampments. There are a lot of homeless in the woods. There are a lot of dusty vehicles. There are a lot of dusty RVs all through the county. That's true, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our fellow county parents and our fellow workers, the retired. There's no available housing for them. They live here. They are here. They're not going anywhere. Families living in the illegal homes already, and there are many throughout the county. I've seen hundreds over the years. They fear that they will be reported and become homeless. And there are homeless folks now, good homeless folks. You know, everybody imagines the worst, you know, drug addicts and, you know, there's all the extremes, and that's true. But there are many, many homeless folks in our county, and their homeless children attend our schools. And with affordable alternative housing, including RVs and trailers, they would have a home, and they would have stability. And people are at risk of losing their rentals, and people are at risk of losing their rentals. This would give them an alternative. I've heard a lot of hateful statements online, and I really would like everyone to get away from that and be constructive. Let's have some constructive solutions and not, just heavy fear-based, worst scenarios. And alternative homes have always been here. This is nothing new. I believe the approval of the alternative housing ordinance is the right thing to do. I would make some changes to it. Some of them have been brought up tonight. And I think it's morally the right action, and I think it's for the good of the county. And there are many ways that this would benefit our county. I won't go into them. Some people have mentioned them. I think the approval of I think Nevada County, in my opinion, having followed the county government for a long time, I think Nevada County has the intelligence, I think it has the concern, the expertise, and the confidence and the courage to do this. And I think also with all change or complexity, situations will arise. And I've seen that the county designs and solves and implements very complex plans. So I have confidence that this, as a plan, can be implemented. It's going to take some work. It's a tough one, but it can take some work. I think it's doable. And I just think it's important to keep out of the extreme fear and just work on this. And I think, as Mr. Durkin and many others have so logically and rationally put it, there is no place to go. And I urge the Board of Supervisors to adjust and approve the alternative housing ordinance, support a place to go, and support the home for people who are in this parameter, where they're just borderline and they need a little bit of support and some stability. Thank you.
Rebecca Grace, I am a local realtor. I've lived here for a long time. I'm also okay. I live here, love it. Better? I can hear myself, so sorry. Okay. Is it better? Okay. All right. Live here, work here, love here. As a landlord, I took the time to read through every word of this ordinance, and I have lots of concerns. Primarily insurance. I called several different insurance agents and said, how does this work? Here's the ordinance, give me your feedback. It was not very positive, it was very frightening, and the reason is that an RV is not considered to be a year-round dwelling unit by any insurers that I could speak to. So I called several, and I did provide the ordinance and just didn't preface that with anything, said, give me your thoughts on this. And it wasn't very good. So I have a lot of concerns because that's putting people at a lot of risk, not only the landlords, because you do become a business owner the minute you become a landlord, particularly on the property, you have to have liability insurance in addition to fire insurance. How is that person living in their RV insured? Are they? From the information that I could find, there were some giant gaping holes. And I think that is really frightening and needs to be considered. I think we have a lot of really great action in the county that provides through Title 25, through the ADU. We have some great means to provide housing that is safe. In researching RVs, they are not built to the same code as a stick-built, which we all know, but they are underpowered if somebody were to live there full-time. It's not the same electrical system that we would be required to have in a home. On that note, they're not paying property taxes the same way you would be if it were an ADU or stick-built. So to me, that's concerning because we want them to be providing additional services to our community. We want to make sure people are safe. If you've ever seen an RV in an automobile accident or seen a tree fall on it, it's pretty frightening. And basically cardboard and staples and little metal siding. It's not anywhere you want to be if something bad happens. So that really concerns me as a human. As far as powering that vehicle, it takes twice the resources of a stick build or an ADU. So we're using additional resources, or they're hooking up a generator or propane to ensure heat and cooling. We do have extreme weather here. Just the last couple years with Snowmageddon in some of the mobile home parks, which are built to higher standards than an RV, we saw real significant issues with snow load. And I am very concerned because that was lower than 3,200 feet. So I just think there's some fatal flaws in this current proposed ordinance, and I think we have some very difficult ones, and I am concerned with changing the fabric of our community and pushing people who need services out to rural areas so we don't have to see them, which is how it looks to me. I think we need to come up with a better plan, and I think we're such a great community. I think we have a better way, and I do think the centralized location that's providing services is probably a better route.
Hello, my name is Richard Cotting, and some of you might be a little upset because I'm the one calling out the, hey, you're talking for 6 or 7 or 9 minutes. So I see you got my timer going. Give me like a 10-second warning and that'll be great. So I would like to say that I am in support of the ordinance. It's not perfect. I don't know if I've ever seen one that is. I know for like years, everybody talked about how the cannabis ordinance was going to destroy Nevada County, and I haven't seen that happen. So let's see about how this RV ordinance is going to, annihilate us, and all these people are going to come from all over. The fact is, the people are already here. And you can talk about it as it's a homeless solution, but it's really not. I want to live in an RV on my property. I'm not homeless now, but I could be, or I could be forced to live in my RV not being permitted, which I could probably get away with. But there's a lot of people that want to follow the laws, right? And this is a chance to give those people the opportunity to have a safe place to live, right? And so it's not going to solve the homeless problem, and I don't know, nobody said that's the case. I have not seen that anywhere. So people that are coming up here saying it's not going to solve the homeless problem, nobody that I've seen or heard has said that. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. So there is one thing big in this ordinance that I don't agree with, and I would like it changed. The fact that there has to be a residence or a structure that's permitted already on the property, it doesn't make sense. Because if I had a home on my property right now that was permitted, I wouldn't need to live in an RV. So I think the idea is you give people the chance to put an RV on the property. They follow the rules. They have to have it tied down. They have to have stuff around it. If there's a fire, they're going to be like pulling all of that stuff off and putting tires on and unstrapping the ties and then clogging the roadways for all the rich people who can't get out, that are actually towing their trailers and their RVs and their ski-doos and trying to get all that stuff out. And when their house burns down, they still have an RV to live in KOA, where we're talking about people living in forests having campfires that don't have a place to stay. And like, let's come together and give people a place to live. Okay? All right. There's already so many out there. So a lot of people are coming up saying there's this huge problem. We can't pass this ordinance. Well, the ordinance doesn't exist and there is a problem already. So let's try to pass an ordinance to help. So everybody that's so scared of change and oh gosh, this horrible thing's gonna happen, just give it a try. Remember when you were 14 and you were had visions, or you were 18? All right, so let me keep going. This is not just for
Brian, you need a gap.
Nice.
Lauren Zeman,
right outside Lake Wildwood. I'm a homeowner down there. Oh, thank you. Thank you. At any rate, I would say that as this ordinance stands, I do not agree with it for a number of reasons. Has anybody been to Arizona or New Mexico and seen what your RVs look like down there after a couple of years of being out in the weather? Think about that. We've got different weather considerations here, but similarly, it's difficult to maintain those no matter what your best efforts are, correct? Additionally, related to enforcement, I've heard a lot of that. Remember that in Nevada County, our enforcement here is complaint driven. If you do not complain, it does not get reported and nothing gets done. And I can tell you from the 8 RVs that live next door to my house, right outside of Lake Wildwood, I've complained numerous times, nothing gets done. So, you know, they don't pay property taxes there. It looks like a jungle. There's children and dogs running around, and there's 8 RVs. And the house is there. I also was gifted a home from my father and my parents when they passed in Wisconsin, and back there, you have to own a home for at least 2 years in order to do a VRBO or an Airbnb. That can be a solution for people. But the other thing that I really wanted to get to is that we have gone to approving a tiny home ordinance this year, right? Right at the beginning of the year. Why can we not wait to see what that particular ordinance gives to our county to be able to provide houses to people without the ability to force them to do a whole lot of stuff to live in an RV? That I don't see how it can stand the way the ordinance is. I appreciate the work that you've done for it. But I also think that we've got an opportunity to try to take a look at how our tiny homes ordinance might work for our county and be able to build off of that.
I figured I should probably come in last. My name is Brad Piesheimer, and my name is Brad Piesheimer, and I've been placing people in motorhomes and RVs for 9 years. And I just placed my 317th family. I've been doing this for a long time. We don't just go dump these on a site and just, okay. We have certain requirements, much like, my requirements right now are almost identical to what you guys are doing. Same thing electrical, same thing water, same thing septic. Okay? My setbacks are no much different than yours. My setbacks are much further. The one thing I would like to see on this is changed is going, because ANSI, ANSI, inspection, they're about $1,000. Okay? And I'd like to see that pushed out to 5 years instead of every 2 years. I think that's a more reasonable timeline that people can abide by. Basically, we have a housing problem. Now, if we try to go in and, let's say, put in a house like a trailer park, I know, at least I understood, they spent $18 million on the park across from the fairgrounds. That's $18 million. That's a lot of money. Okay? I don't think, and that took 7 years to get that put in. Okay? We need to resolve the problem now. We don't need to wait 7 years. Okay? What I'm suggesting is go by what the county has determined here. I think it's very reasonable. People are concerned about fire issues. I'll tell you a short story. We went up to Paradise during the Paradise fire. We had 40 people show up because I put a posting on Facebook asking for people with trucks and trailers to get 4-H kids to help us out. We had 40 trailers that went up there. I almost lost the hair on my arms coming back one time in the truck. It was that bad. I didn't see one motorhome or one trailer on a roadway coming out of there. People just left. So I think this idea that, they're gonna be inhibiting fire, or people getting out during fire times, I think it's a false goose. So anyway, appreciate the work that you've done. I look forward to seeing the final result. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Teresa Lyon Clark, and I've lived here almost 30 years, and I'll be brief. I just think that it's really important that we do something, move together as a community. And I'm just glad to see, I know this ordinance isn't perfect, but I see it as a good first step in the right direction. And I know there's lots of disagreements about, you know, a lot of the details and the requirements, and there seems to be a huge, I didn't even realize how bad the problem is with the encampments. So we obviously have a terrible problem right now. So I think it's good that we're coming together and working together to solve this problem. It's a really, really overwhelming problem. It's more than just housing, it's jobs, it's so many things that we're dealing with. Anyway, I'm happy to see this, and thank you for your work, and I really liked that, I like it when people can come together and respect each other and respect each other's opinions and arguments. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tina Spookroot, and I'm a lender. And the only thing I'd like to say is the effect with the tiny home on wheels or the motorhome, if somebody's trying to refinance their property, they're all gonna have to be removed. So you put a septic or whatever on a tiny home on wheels, because it's on wheels, it's not lendable, but we'll have to remove those items. So people should be aware of that if they're gonna do that. That's all I wanted to say.
All right, one last call before we wrap it up.
Are you going to question?
I'm sorry.
How many souls reside in one RV?
We don't have a limit on the number of people. We don't regulate the number of people in a house or in a
Are you more familiar with the problem of human trafficking?
Yeah.
I fully suspect that he can handle a proposal like this, but we have to build proposals in this county to the lowest common denominator. And human trafficking is a problem, and this proposal opens the floodgates for Nevada County for human trafficking.
This ordinance only allows one RV per property, correct?
That is correct.
Only one.
One per property.
But if there's like no other trailers or no, it's only one.
Correct.
Then how are they going to enforce it?
Through the permitting process and through the inspections.
That's not enforcing it.
If there's multiple RVs during
If
the
there's one
inspection,
RV,
then
don't
it's.
they enforce it?
Sorry?
If there's one RV on any property in our county, and somebody were to complain on it that it wasn't legal, who would enforce it?
Our code compliance.
They don't do
division?
their job right. They need more ability to do their job.
Well, you asked the question, so the answer is that our code enforcement officer would go out, investigate, and see if there was an issue, and then potentially cite the homeowner or the property owner in order to get into compliance with the permitting requirements.
But I think if you were to make that work today, because it's not working, before we add another ordinance, would probably be smart, because all you're going to do is open the floodgates for problems. Because right now there's thousands of trailers all out the county. It's a great idea, affordable housing, and it completely makes sense, but the legality of it. If I've got somebody next to me that's illegal and causes a fire and it burns my property down, who's responsible? That homeowner that doesn't have anything in front? Who's responsible? The county, because you guys decided that we're going to allow this to be a dwelling? I mean, it makes no sense. And if there's septic running on my property from somebody else's and it's not permitted, who's responsible? Because you guys permitted the septic system, now they're doing something illegal. Code enforcement isn't going to do anything because they haven't. I've been working on our problem for 3 years, nobody cares. They just say, yeah, there's no trailers over there. Oh, there's not? They won't bring the sheriff, they won't get them.
So you did hear a lot of comments about the concerns regarding code enforcement And that's something we are noted. We'll talk to our code enforcement department.
I spoke to code enforcement. They said 3 out of 4 violations are regarding trailers right now. So currently we're overloaded with that.
Yes, I understand. The issue with enforcement can be difficult. I understand.
And they don't even agree with your own idea. They don't agree with code enforcement.
Okay. Thank you.
What about taxes on fire too? We've got an assessment, $176 a year since 2015. Is that going to increase now because there's more hazard out there?
There are other questions. So I have a question for you. And so if we install an ADU on a property, we have to meet the Board of Forestry road standards, correct? So is this going to apply to these RVs?
So there is a provision in the ordinance that requires driveways to meet driveway standards.
Okay, so it's basically the same as an ADU though?
Correct.
I do have one comment. I have dealt with code compliance. I've had a number of people that have called me, complained about neighbors who have too many RVs. And I showed up at code enforcement one day, and 2 days later, code enforcement was out at the property that I had a problem with. And I went over and spoke to the people and said, you guys need to change this. It's not appropriate. They told me to go fly a kite, not in those words, but 2 days later, code enforcement was over there. And they revised the issue. So my experiences with code enforcement have been vastly different than this gentleman's. And I mean, I've been treated with respect by them. They've handled all the issues professionally with me. And again, my experience with code enforcement is different.
Yeah, I understand. We've heard the comments regarding code enforcement concerns. It is a small department, and they do try to work with people. You know, this is definitely a sensitive subject. They do try to work with people, so we're not just putting people out on the street homeless. And so each case is a little bit different. And so there is, you know, a case-by-case assessment, and they try to work with people as much as possible. I understand the frustrations. Charlie?
I just want to point out that the homeless isn't a kind of person. I put a gal up on my RV who was a working waitress, but couldn't afford a place to live. This is an employee, member of our community, with no place to live. There are ladies with kids living in cars because they can't afford daycare, so they have no place for their kids, so they had to quit their job. The homeless is a wide variety of people. I just want to put that out there. There is drug addicts, there's a whole, you know, mentally, veterans coming back, shell-shocked. It's a huge variety of people. I just don't want the perception of the homeless.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this going to be the final draft that's going in front of the planning commission in October? I think the timeframe is.
That's not totally determined yet. We're still taking in all the comments. Obviously, all the comments tonight. We've got, 1,900 survey results and a lot of letters.
If you do make any changes, are you going to kind of push that timeline back though to give people adequate time to respond?
It's possible, depending on the significance of any changes that are made. We will probably try to stay on track as much as possible, but we're definitely taking in the comments that we received and potentially making adjustments. And we'll adjust the timelines accordingly, and we'll try to keep everyone notified of any changes in the upcoming meetings, things like that.
Right, you want to mention the back meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
So we do have two more, I'll get to you in just a sec. Just a quick note that next week, Monday, I think, is the South County Municipal Advisory Committee, so we'll have another meeting. It'll be down at the Higgins Lions Center. And then the following week, I think on the 23rd, there's another Penn Valley MAC meeting, Municipal Advisory Committee meeting. So we'll have this presentation and another opportunity to receive inputs of someone you'd like to attend that, or if someone wasn't here tonight, you can pass the word on, if there's other opportunities to comment before we get to the public hearing process. Yes, sir.
Two things. So I dealt with code enforcement, had a great experience, and problems all resolved. So I feel like there are positive aspects to that. I can understand how it would be frustrating for people to be able to go to work and not work. But anyway, my experience was positive. Second, I was just curious if you could explain the logic behind the idea of having a residence already on the property in order to have the RV. I understand it's an ADU versus like an accessory dwelling unit, so in order to be an accessory, I'm assuming there has to already be like a main structure, but is there a way it could be reworked for that, just an RV as long as it meets all the, sewer, water, electric, driveway, fire, clearing, the neighbor?
I'm sure they would, I just don't think they want it on undeveloped property. So there's one piece of the property, nothing on it, that's standard.
So, to answer the question, it's twofold. Twofold. First off, it's obviously the infrastructure is available. But it's also meant to help reduce the cost of placing an RV because the infrastructure is already available. It doesn't require the owner to come and build new septic, new well. So it's kind of meant for two purposes. You also need to note that, as Brian mentioned, we've received over 1,900 comments or so, and there's a lot of variance in those. And so we're trying to come up with an ordinance that addresses those different parameters. And then one thing I did want to kind of jump in and mention is there was a comment about this being a temporary thing. That if you meet the standards when you get approved, but 2 years later you meet the standards, you're approved for 2 more years. And that's a rolling thing. So it's not temporary in that nature. If you no longer meet the standards, you're going to have to bring it up to code and so on and so forth. But really it's about having more structure available and making sure that you can tie it back.
Well, what if you, like he was saying, you own the property, you can't afford to build, but you can afford to do the compliance issues that you have laid out, and can afford an RV, they're relatively not 50 years old, maybe 10, 15, 20 years old at the most. And that's what they can afford to do. They can afford to do the house that has all the stuff and do the thing. I mean, that's what we're trying to do is bring people into residence. And we're already property owners, a lot of us. We just can't afford to build there.
Yeah, I think that's something more.
I mean, that's something I think that really needs to be addressed. I have friends who have, I don't know their particulars, I don't know all the little stuff about their situation. They've lost their property. They owned it, they were living on it illegally, and they no longer own that property any longer. And that's not right either.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to that balance and all the comments that we've received through the process. There's a lot for, there's a lot like don't make too many regulations, there's a lot like don't allow. So we're trying to find that middle ground based on direction from the board of supervisors to develop an ordinance that works for our county in a way that provides opportunities to come into compliance, but also protects the neighborhood character. Right. So it's a difficult process, as everyone's noted.
And I think the encampments are a total separate issue.
Absolutely.
And I think the fire problems are a total separate issue. Right. They're not this issue.
Yeah.
I was just curious why you chose 2 years and the reason.
A lot of the comments were for 1 year or less. And so we felt 2 years was a good balance, right, a little more time to get established. But there wasn't like a magic. 2 years makes the most sense. It's just a lot of comments were like only allowed for 1 year, and that's it. So we felt 2 years was enough time to provide an opportunity to come back. And basing it on our urgent care ordinance, which is 6 months, there's an initial fee and it's a certain amount, and it's a little higher. And then the annual or the every 6 months is much less. And so that's what we were looking at. But again, the Board of Supervisors sets the fees for the county, and so it's not up to the planning department. And a lot of comments are about, like, what about insurance and financing? This is a land use ordinance. It's specific to land use. And so things like insurance and how our, the other things are not really land use issues. So that's kind of where our charge as a planning agency is to look at zoning and setbacks and fire safety, water, and all those things that we've put into the ordinance. And we also recognize that it's not a perfect ordinance, but it's a really good first step towards meeting the direction of the Board of Supervisors. No. So that's the reference to the existing ordinance that we allow in the county. So that's kind of, like Brian mentioned, a lot of the standards are derived from existing ordinances in the county that allow for residential uses.
I was just going to say, let's say this ordinance goes forward and I wish to put an RV on my property to supply housing to someone. What are you looking at as far as a timeline? Or if I came in and did a permanent application today, what would be an occupation piece or something like that? I haven't seen that.
Sure.
Excuse me, could you repeat your question, please?
She's asking what the timeline is if she wanted to put an RV through this ordinance. If it was approved and adopted by the board, what would be the timeline for her to go from submitting her application to getting occupancy? Is that correct?
Correct.
So typically, an administrative dwelling permit is an administrative process. So if you can meet all the standards and requirements, you meet your inspection. Typically, we would issue a conditional approval letter within 30 to 45 days. A lot of times, there's some back and forth in that process. You may not have a certain thing that you need. And then it would be on you to go through the process of getting whatever permits you might need to support the RV that you're proposing. So if you needed a building permit to connect to electrical, once you get that building permit, and once you go through the process of getting all the other standards and you can document that you met them, then you would get your occupancy. So it's unknown exactly, but it would be, the county's role would be 30 to 45 days. Within 30 days, we let you know if you need more information. So.
Yeah, I've had experience with code enforcement, and until I started to do some name dropping, I didn't get any attention. And this was on a cannabis issue. And it was like, oh, well, we can't get out there for 2 weeks, we're really busy. Once I dropped the name of my supervisor, and you might get your supervisors out and get on them, then it happened, and the guy was out there that afternoon. So, this isn't about code enforcement. You need some backing on that. And if you don't have the staff right now to enforce code, what are you going to do with this? And where, again, is the money going to come from? Is that going to come out of our property tax, or is that going to come out of the permit?
Again, I don't accept the fees. It's not our department's, the Board of Supervisors, but I imagine some of that goes through the fee structure.
There's some really nice RVs that are completely self-contained and solar. I mean, they're like $80,000. Anyway, so is connecting to electricity going to be a requirement, or as long as they? I mean, and these don't. They're not running out of really loud generators.
Yeah, no, I can go. Let me just answer that. You're allowed, based on like the tiny homes on wheels, you're allowed to connect to the county's off-grid policy. So an RV could also be that. It does actually require you to have a generator, but it doesn't allow for your generator to be the primary source of power. In the back.
Is there any time limit on how many hours a day someone can run without gas generator?
I'd probably refer to the building department, but I don't know that there is, so that would be a little bit of a difficult thing, but technically it can't be a primary source.
Because if you're on 3 acres,
It depends on the type of generator. It depends on the type of generator.
Is this proposal been introduced as a consolidated fire chief?
The ordinance is currently being circulated to all the fire agencies in the county.
Law enforcement as well?
All agencies on our list. Yeah.
Couple things. My experience with code compliance has been that if there's a problem in a neighborhood, you need to get several of the neighbors together and form a group and have them fill out a form. Otherwise, you don't get too much response. And then you have to really follow up on that floor. I have a question on the ordinance here. You say a recreational vehicle, motorhome, travel trailer, truck camper, or camping trailer. What is a camping trailer?
Like a Hawaiian trailer. Yeah. It's basically, it's, those terms are straight from the state definition of a recreational vehicle.
I just couldn't figure it out.
So, you know, we need to wrap it up and get going. I really appreciate everyone coming. Please do review the ordinance in detail. Submit your comments to the email above. If you go to our webpage, you can sign up for your name so you'll be contacted for future opportunities to comment. And, you know, really appreciate everyone coming out tonight. And with that, let's go ahead and